All right, we're back. It is COMP229 in the fall 2016 semester. It's week 6, part 2 of our broadcast. Taking a bit of a break there. I just checked, did a brief check of everybody's work that's here. Looks pretty good for the most part. Like I said earlier, I would recommend that you kind of prettify it a little bit, make it themed, so it looks a little bit more like the game that you're portraying. If you're doing a game for cricket, then make it look like cricket, football, something like that. If you're doing wrestling, if you're tracking UFC stars every week, I don't know why you do that, but let's just say you were, make sure that it's bloody, lots of punches. I mean, I'm joking. Just make it so it's themed is what I'm saying. So it looks like it's you're tracking whatever you're tracking, right? If I just see tables, then you're going to lose marks on UI. It's kind of boring if you just see tables, right? Okay, let's continue what we were doing. So when we last left off, we kind of had this stuff working for our student details. We changed the links for those. We're going to come back to that in a second. We also changed the links for the student table itself. One thing we need to do is actually get ourselves logged in, right? So we've got our login page, right? We're going to build in the login piece in a second. But I also want to build in, if I run the login page for a second, if I just click run, right? One thing we're going to note is that there's a place to register. Usually login and register there should be links to register. Right. Also, our navigation has to be updated because all we have here is it just directs us here. But there is no place to register, and there should be two things. Either there should be a link here to click to the register page, or a register link on the top when you're not logged in. One of the two. Most places have both, but it's okay to have one or the other, which means we have to update our links. For now, if I type in register in here, I should be able to go to a register page. Let's do that. So how do we set up a register page? Same thing like we did with the login. I have a code snippet for that. So I'm going to go add new web forms with master page, right? We're going to call this register. Right? So before you can log in, you have to register a user. Right? Here's our register page. Right now it's empty. But we're going to grab a code snippet from eCentennial. Right? So I'm going to grab this code snippet right here. I'm going to copy it, and I'll talk about what it does in a second. So copy, and then go back. And inside here, paste. Okay, so we've got another form. Now this is going to have a couple things, right? One is a username text box, right, where you say username, right? I'm asking for a phone number. I'm asking for an email address, and so on, right? And then a password, and I want you to confirm the password, okay? One thing I've also put in there is something called a compare validator. This is new. Right? A compare validator is another kind of control. It's a validation control, right? And what we do is this. We say, look, let's match, right? What's the control to validate? My password text box. My password text box is up here, right? There's my password text box right here. This is the text box I'm validating, right? And then notice that the control, right? So here's our text box itself. I'm just gonna undo this for a second so you can see this. Right? Notice that the ID for this text box, the second one, is confirm password text box, right? And if I kind of scroll to the right, required is true, tab index is 0. All the tab indexes are 0 right now. We can change that for later on, right? And then when we have our validator, it's right underneath the text box, right? And we're saying this, point to the control you want to validate. So this is the one we're validating against, and we're using one to compare to the other. So here's control to compare, password text box, right? And this is control to validate, confirm text box. So this one and this one have to match. And we're saying that they have to be true, right? Here's the operator, equal. So if they're equal, we're good. If we're not equal, then we're going to put up a message. Here's my error message that says, your passwords must match. Okay? That's how the control to validate works. I have a cancel button and a register button. Okay? Now remember, we did this last time. If I run this page, because I don't have a cancel button click event right now, it's going to fail. Right? To remedy this really quickly, I'm going to put it up on the back end just to make it work. Right? So a good way to do this, and I'll do it for the other page as well, is if I go on click, because these are auto event wire up, if I open it up, and if I just double click on the event to create, it'll actually create that event. Same name, right? So I don't have to go in there. So it'll actually work. And the same thing goes this way. If I erase this one, register button click, and I open it up and I double click, it'll actually put that back. Right? What it'll actually do is on the register.aspx.cs page, the backend page, it'll put those events in there. So it automatically does that for us. Let's do the same thing for the login page. Login page is missing that event for the login button. Remember we took it out? Let's put it back in. And again, I'm going to put it back in somewhere inside here. I'm going to say on click, right? And then equals to, and then it's going to just create that event. Login button click event, right? So once we start typing it, it makes it on the back end. You can see that it makes a little stub for that page. It doesn't do anything right now, but all of it is working. Okay, so there's a register page. We got a login page, right? We're also going to need a way to log out. So we need to log in, register, log in, and log out, right? So we need a logout page, but the logout page is going to be blank. Why? I never really have to see a logout page. You don't have to click to log out. Once you click the link, it logs you out. So why do I need a page? Because it's not the page itself, the HTML, but the backend that I need to click, that I need to trigger. So the logout page is going to be an empty page that triggers the backend to log you out and redirect you back to the login page. That's all it does, right? So there is no physical UI in the logout page. It's just redirection. That's all that happens. And you can do that with other pages if you think about it, right? All right, let's make that page. So again, I'm going to make a new page. I'm going to go back to Solution Explorer. And again, I'm just creating all my pages that I need, right, first, right? So I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to go Add, New Form, New Web Form with Master Page. Do I need a master page for this one? No, I don't really need one, but I'm going to add it in anyway, right? I don't need one, though. I don't need a style for my page I'm never going to go to, right? So I really don't need this one, but I'm going to call this thing Log Out. It's a logout, and the logout page is going to be blank like this. Right? There is no need for me. I don't even have to put in a title for it. Like I don't have to go log out, right? Because I'm never going to get there, ever. I'll put it in, but it's never going to happen, right? Okay, so I've got my pages. I need to code them up because one part of it is having the pages. The other part is adding the code in. One other thing I want to try and do is this. I want to be able to get my menu when I log in, right? I want to get to like a main menu, right? I don't want to go see my student right away. I want to go to another page, and I've provided that page for you. So if I go to my Contoso folder, I've got my student details and student page. You could have had other pages in there. For example, my departments. I probably should move all these in there too, right? Departments, enrollments, all this stuff should be there too. Courses, let's move all those in there. So all this stuff should be in there, right? Here's my courses, that should be in there, right? They don't do anything right now, they're just stubs, right? Because I would have to add those in, right? All the functionality. But you'd want to put them in Contoso, right? Makes sense. So we got these ones, but I also want to put in a main menu. So I'm going to kind of right click here, add a new web form with master page, and call that main menu. Here's our main menu. We don't have to have this page, but it's kind of nice to have something like this. Where do I get the code for that? Code snippet up on eCentennial, right? Instead of you having to type it by hand, we're just going to grab it. And what does this do? It just creates another set of links for us, like a secondary navigation. That's what it is, right? Which I'm going to add in here, like this. Here's my main menu. Remember, I can't get to my main menu until I'm logged in, but the way it looks is this. It's going to show students, right? Like a little partition here, right? And then my student ASPX and my student details page, right? And then my courses, I don't have course details because I never made that page. And then my departments and my department details, and I don't have enrollments. I didn't even put that in there, right? But you can see that it has these links. That's all this do. It's almost like a main menu, like a directory more than anything else of things you can do when you're logged in, right? Kind of makes it nice to say, well, here's where I'm at. And you can actually call this main menu. There we are. Cool. All right, we're going to wire up all these pages in a second, but let's just see how this goes. So here's my departments and blah, blah, blah. So what I want to do, right, is when I log in, I want to, when I click the login button, I perform my login, right? So I'll code up these pages and I'll explain what we're doing with all of them. Okay. So one step at a time, and then we'll build up our nav bar, because our nav bar kind of needs to be built up in order for it to have any kind of functionality. We can't get to anything without our nav bar, right? Because our nav bar is looking pretty ugly right now. Okay. First things first. Whenever we connect with the database for identity and security, we need a couple of more using statements. And I'm going to go through this a couple times. So these are required for identity and ON security. Okay, here are the ones. Using Microsoft dot ASP.NET dot identity. Okay, you need that one for sure. We also need using Microsoft dot ASP.NET dot identity dot entity framework, because we're dealing with the entity framework, right? And then the last one is using Microsoft, right, dot .on dot security. Those are all the ones you need to have security in place, so you can actually do login, log out, you know, register, all that stuff, right? We're going to see this over and over again. Okay, that's number one. Second, inside the login button is all the fun happens, right? The login button click logs us in. Let's do this. All right, so how do I do the login button? Well, so first what I want to do is I want to create, right, a new user store. That's what I want to do, and a user manager object. Okay, so this is something new. This is what we need to use, right, in order for us to you know, connect to the entity, to the database, right? Hey, by the way, where is that darn database? There's nothing keeping track of what we're doing. We have to do that too, right? But one step at a time. First, we'll make the login and all the code for everything, and then we'll test it. Okay? It's kind of the chicken or the egg. Which one do we do first? The connection, or we do this one first? Doesn't really matter, right? You can't do this. You can't do the connection without this, and you can't do this without connection. So, kind of, the connection is useless. All right, next, we're going to use the var keyword for a second. We're going to say var user store is equal to a new. Notice if I start typing user store, because I've got those using statements in place, it'll give me a user store like this, new user store, and I want to make it an identity user. That's the object that we're making, right? Okay, so why var? Because remember what I talked about before. If I hover over this object, it tells me what it is. It's a user store identity object. It would be like saying this: user store identity user, right? User store is equal to new user store identity user. That's what I'm doing, right? So this makes it a little easier. User store identity, because we're assigning an object of type user store identity user. So far, this is a type object like that, right? Instead of me having to put that in the front and identifying us. So it's not, like I said before, it's called implicit typing or inferred data typing, right? It's not. It's actually. It is rigid typing though. I can't reassign this to something else. Not like JavaScript, like I said before. So that's number one. Next, the user manager. So user manager and user store are two different things. We'll talk about those. So I'm going to make a new user manager object. There it is, and of type identity user, right? But we're also going to pass in a reference to the user store. Okay. So again, managing users, storing users. Very simple. If it's called user manager, user store, think about, for Microsoft, it makes it very easy to understand what it means, right? Okay, next, we're going to search for and create a, this is inside of our login, and create a new user object, right? Here's what we're going to do, right? So what do? Var user, we're going to call it user, is equal to, and here's where we're going to use the user manager lowercase, right? Not uppercase, that's the uppercase version. We want the lowercase version, our version, manager, user manager dot find, right? We want to find, that's what username we want to find. Our username text box. That's why we need to have a form that works. Username text box, right? Dot text is what we're looking for. We're taking the name from the username text box dot text, and we're finding that user. That's the user we're finding, all right? And we're comparing it go password text box text is how we're verifying it. So here's the username, here's the password. We're passing it into the user manager and finding it. And then whatever the resultant user is, we're going to store it inside of our user variable. It's pretty simple, all right? And if you read it, it should be just like this. It should be understandable what it looks like. And that's why we called it username textbox.text, password textbox.text, and this long thing. So we know we can't get confused of where we're getting the information. Okay. Now that we check, we say, well, if a match is found, so yes, the username does exist and password for the user is cool for the user. So how do we do that? We say if user is not equal to null, right? It's not a nullable type. The user is not equal to null, then what do we want to do? Well, we want to authenticate. We know the user exists and log in our user, right? So the user object is just a temporary object. We're not really creating it. We're making an object that holds information about the user that's been entered. And we're trying to find if that user exists. If the user exists, this will actually have a value. If not, it'll have null. Okay, those are the two options. Okay, then we're going to say something like this. Authentication manager, so var authentication manager, I can spell, right, is equal to, now this is new, HTTP context, right, dot current, dot get Owen context. Again, you won't have to remember this, don't worry, right, dot authentication, right, is what the authentication manager is. So basically what this is, what this does is says, hey, get the information, authenticate the user, and store it inside this authentication manager. I'm just breaking it down for you. You don't have to remember this though, okay? Next, my user identity, right, that's what I'm going to call it, is equal to my user manager, the one we just made up here, right, dot create identity. We're going to pass in, sorry, user, right, the one we just got, is our identity for the user, right, and then default authentication types, which is, of course, we put it before application cookie, which is what we're using. We're using cookie types to authenticate the user. That's the user identity. If you notice, if you hover over, it says system.security.claims, claims identity is user identity. So basically, we're going to get an identity for the user from the database. Okay. Next, sign them in. Sign in the user, right? So we're going to say authentication manager, the one we just created, with a reference to the current authentication scheme, right? Dot sign in. Seriously, that's all it is. This is actually going to sign in with a new authentication properties, right? And what we want to do is put in something called is persistent is equal to false. So we're not going to say persistent connection. And user identity, whatever the user identity is. Okay, what does this mean? Sign in the user identity, which we're getting here when we create this user and using the user information, the username and password to log in. After we've got authentication with our authentication context, right? We log in the user and we pass that information into the authentication manager and sign them in. That's what it does. Okay, so several steps. Again, I don't expect you to remember this. Just as a pattern. I want you to see this as a pattern that you can use to authenticate your own users. All right? Next, now that he's signed in, we want to redirect him. Let's say it for sign in. Where do we want to redirect the user when he's signed in? Right? The main menu, because we just made that. Right? And we want to say something like this, response.redirect, or redirect him to where it's going to be, which we're going to use the absolute sign for the tilde, contoso, and then from there, main menu.aspx, which is what we made. right? So here's the actual sign-in. We don't have to do anything else after that, but it makes sense to move us somewhere else, to the main menu. Okay. Okay, cool. This is if the user is not null. That's if the user match was found. How about if it's not found, right? If it's not found, then it's an else, right? Else we don't find the user, right? So user is not found for whatever, or the user password combination doesn't work, whatever, right? So we want to do something like this. We know that we have a status label. Remember I showed you the status label? We have that alert. Status label text is going to equal to invalid username or password. Right? We don't know what it is. We're not going to tell the user what it is. We could find out, by the way, right? But we don't need to tell them. We say one of the two is wrong, right? And we want to also say that the alert flash .visible is equal to true. Oops. Why is that? Well, going back to our login page, notice at the top of our page, we have an alert flash, right? But the visibility for the alert flash is false. So this whole div tag is false. It's not visible at all until we have an error. And when we have an error, it becomes visible and shows the red sign. Right? That's what happens with the alert. So we use that little alert flash at the top of our page if we have a problem logging in. Okay? That's number one. Two, we can't log in a user unless we've registered a user. Right now, there's no users registered, right? So we can't do that unless we register a new user. So we need to fix the registration piece. But first, because I want to kind of use proper protocol, I'm going to go to Team Explorer, and I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to Home, and I'm going to go to Changes, and you can see all these changes we added in, right? But really, I added in login, log out, and register pages, right? But we're going to say added login functionality, or we'll say logic. We didn't add the functionality is not there yet, right? And we'll go push or sync push. So you have all that code right now. Notice that it didn't crap out, right? When I put this in, I don't have any errors, right? If I was to build this project, that's a really good next step. Build the project to make sure it builds. If it doesn't build and we get an error, that's a good time to fix it, right? Yes. Yeah, if you don't get those three parts, then your username, your user won't work, right? Can't log in or connect, right? That's the first thing. Are you good? It's up on GitHub right now. Okay. All right, let's continue. That's why I put it up on GitHub when I'm done. So if I go too fast, go on GitHub, get it, and go move on. All right, next. I'm going to close this part down. Go to register. So register, we've got our form for registration, right? We got our form here, the register page, and it says all fields are required. Let's take a look and see what this register page looks like. So we haven't seen the register page yet. By the way, it's nothing fancy, right? For you, don't use my register. Please, whatever I'm asking you to do, when I give you this stuff, this is just patterns, okay? When you make it for yourself, I want you to revamp the login page, the register page, make it your own, because this is for me. The colors work for me. You know, whatever. I'm making a very generic looking page. For you, it's got to be styled according to what you're doing, all right? Please don't give me this back, okay? That would not suffice. All right, so I get username, phone number, email, password, and confirm. Remember, I did this little validator here to confirm that these two things match, and then I click register. If I click cancel, it's got to go somewhere else, right? So those are the functionalities we want. Okay, you're going to ask me this question now. There's no database. So how do I connect to the database? How does it store it, right? Well, the great thing is, as soon as we set up our register page and our login page and register for the first time, Entity Framework creates our database by using the code-first approach, right? Because we don't have it, we have our registration page, doesn't have it. It first sees, hey, do I have a database? Yes, great, use it. If I don't have a registration, if I don't have a database, create it. That's what we're going to do here with this page, okay? Let's go and code it up. So stop. I'm going to go back to the backend page. So I'm going to go to Solution Explorer, and I'm going to look at the register page, which is right here. And I'm going to look at the view code with F7. Right there it is. I'm going to close this up for now. Okay, just like we did for the login page, we need to kind of do similar things for the register page, right? The only way we can register, as an example, right, is if we have some kind of code to let us do that, right? So there's got to be functionality, and the first thing is we need to add in some basic things. What are the 3 things we're going to need here? Remembers. Required for identity, right? It's all the same thing. And ON, there's actually a pattern we've been seeing, right? Even with the entity framework, we have some using statements we always use, right? The data binding one, the entity framework one, the models one, right? Those are the things we have to hook into for the entity framework. And now this is the stuff we need for security, right? So using, let's see if we can guess, using Microsoft, right, .ASP.NET.identity, that's the first one we need. Then using Microsoft, right, .ASP.NET.identity.entity framework, right? And then using Microsoft.ON.security. Right, so those are the 3 things that you need. Same ones as last time. Registration, login, same stuff, right, that you need. And you're using the same framework. Okay, a little bit more complex here. First, let's configure the cancel button. The cancel button is going to redirect us, right? If I want to cancel, I don't want to register, right? Redirect back to the default page, right? Because we're going to go back there. So I'm going to say response, redirect, and where it's going to go to the default.aspx page. So when we press the cancel button, it goes back. Why? Because, and it wouldn't go anywhere else because it wouldn't go to login because you haven't registered yet. So it doesn't make any sense. It's going to go. It's got to make sense from a user perspective. It's got to go back to the first page, or welcome to the page thing, right? So that's that functionality. Next. So again, response.redirect. If I have to ask you on the test next week what it does, it redirects the page, where you are right now when you click on a button or access a control, to whatever page we send it to inside here. Inside this string value, if I kind of hover over it, it tells you. It takes a string URL and redirects you or moves you to the next page. Next, register button click. All right, now this is where it becomes a little bit more hairy. Okay, wow, let's see if you can recognize some of this stuff. Create, seriously, a new user store, right? And user manager. I'm duplicating object, right? Or objects. I always say like this, new user store and manager. So that seems kind of familiar, right? And we can actually copy it. If I was to go to the login page and copy it identically, it would be exactly what I need. So I'm going to go to my login page, and I'm going to go to view code. And if I take that first part, this right here, which I've already typed in, copy. I go back to my register page, and instead of typing it by hand, I'm just going to paste it in. Okay, pretty good there. Right? It's exactly the same. Next, we need a new user object, right? Create duplication, right? A new user object. Okay, what would I do if I want to be a good programmer, a good community person? What should I do? And if I was really making this application work well, what should I be really doing here? I should have a class and some kind of adapter class that has nothing to do with my click events, that does everything for me, right? That I call upon over and over again, that does all this stuff from the get-go. Why would I create this every single time in a button? That doesn't make any sense. I'm duplicating code here. I don't want that. I'd want it in my adapter class. We're not going to do that here, right? Because I might really lose you if I did that, right? Because I'd have an extra class, and the adapter class would have to connect and everything else. It's the right thing to do, though. But if you notice, we're duplicating code here. So if I go var user, remember we did this is equal to new identity user? Exactly what we did last time, right? Now, what we want to do is we want to say something like this. The reason why we have these curly braces here is we have an initialization syntax, right? That's what this is. So, hey, whatever's in the curly brace, initialize my object with that stuff, right? Okay, this is different. we want to say that the username, take a look how that it found that. That is a identity thing. That's built in. Username, watch. Right? Username is equal to what? Username textbox.text. Right? And then phone number, which we have a phone number in there, right? If I go to phone number, by the way, I put this thing in there, right? But it shouldn't be that, it should be this, right? Phone number, right? Okay, good. My phone number, I already have that, which is my phone number.textbox.text, comma. And the last thing is email, right? Which is coming from my email textbox.text. Seriously. That's it, that's the identity, that's the user profile. By the way, in the second half of this course, we will not, and I mean repeat, not be doing this stuff like this. It's way too complex. They've built such a good security system, and that's already pre-built for you for MVC. Doing this would be a complete waste of time, right? And so you'll see next time we'll be scaffolding a little bit more in the second half of the semester than in the first half. First half, you understand what has to happen here. It's very similar. You could do this if you really wanted to, but you wouldn't. Okay, create. Next part. So once we've created a new user identity, a new user, here's my new user, right? Here's a new user in the database, okay? And store the results, right? We want to be able to create a new user in the database and store the results. What do we do? How do we do that? Well, first we're going to say identity result. So if I was to do this properly, I typed it properly. My identity result is called the result, right? And it's equal to the user manager that I created earlier, dot create, and passing in user and the password, right? Password textbox dot text. Yay, that's the result of us creating the user with a user and a username and password. All right, username, that's not the username, but the username also includes username, phone number, email, and password. That's where it is, right? Okay, next, check if successfully registered. So did it work? Sometimes it didn't, right? And if it did work, like what if, for example, if we already have a registered user, same name, would it work? No, it would not work, right? We say, sorry, user already exists. So there's one, if my result succeeded, right? If that's true, okay, result succeeded. It's already built in for you. You have nothing to code, right? That's why Microsoft is beautiful when it comes to this kind of stuff, right? If the result succeeded, then, hey, authenticate me and log in, right? Our new user. That's what we want to do if my result succeeded. What if it didn't succeed, right? So let me just type those out as stubs first. I'll say else. If it didn't succeed, well, display some kind of error, right? Display error in the alert flash, which we also have here. Right? Those are the two options. Did I say, can I log in? Yes. Good. Log them in. If not, display an error. Why would I want to log in a user after registration? Because it makes sense. The user's registering. Imagine if they, some people do, they take you out to another page and say, okay, now log in again, right? Like why would I make them do that again? I can just log them in right now, right? There's two camps on this. From a security perspective, sometimes what we want to do is do an email validation to see if the email matches, all that kind of stuff. We're not doing that in this first half of semester. Next half of semester, we will be doing that kind of stuff more. For now, let's keep it simple. We just need to register a user, assuming that the username has been validated, and log them in. That's all I want you guys to do. Don't worry about validation, email, back and forth. Oh, it's too much, right? Very simple at the beginning. Okay, next. Let's put the code in. So we authenticate the user. So we're going to say something like var authentication manager. Oh, God, this looks very familiar, right? So authentication manager is equal to what? An HTTP context, right? Current get, oh, and this is just logging us in. In fact, I could redirect them to this, the exact same code, right, that I used before, right? And then also user identity, right, is now equal to the user manager. This is a little bit better because we already have this information. Dot create identity, our user, and the default authentication types, which is equal to application cookie. That's the way we're logging him in. Okay, so he's logged in. We need to, he's authenticated or she's authenticated. And now we've got to sign him in. So we're going to say something like, so sign in the user, which is exactly like we did before, which we're going to say authentication manager, right? That's this. Sign in. We've seen this before, our new authentication properties. And we're using here, we're going to use this empty this time because we're doing it for the first time. And then user identity. That's a little different. And then we're going to redirect them. God, this is something that looks familiar to the main menu, right? Just like we did before. A little bit of duplication here. And you can honestly see that if I had a class, an adapter class, that had nothing to do with these pages, that I could use some kind of sign-in method, right? That's specific to my class that does all this stuff that I don't have to replicate. I just have to call it every single time I want to sign in, which is much smarter than doing it this way, right? I'm just putting it out to you from a computer science perspective. It's not the right thing to do. We're doing it because it's easy, not necessarily good right now. Okay. So we signed in. So first of all, does it succeed? Yes, we sign in. Else, we want to change that alert flash. And the way we do that, of course, is our status label, which we set up, right? Dot text is equal to results. This is neat. Dot, what's the error we got? Errors. The errors from the result, whatever that it was. So the user already exists. Something else happened, like you didn't connect to the database. Something else weird, any kind of error, it'll display here. And then dot first or default. And the reason why we say, first or default is because we want to say, just in case we get nothing back, like we don't get an error back, it's some other weird error, it's not going to crash the system. That's why we use first or default. That's what that does. Okay, and then we want to, the alert flash dot visibility is equal to true. Right? Because once we have an error, we want to display it. Again, if you were to look at the register page, there's an alert flash div just like we have in the login page that basically is invisible. That's what we have it. And then when we have an error, we make it visible. That's what we're doing. We're not changing the layout. Okay, it's just pushing us down a little bit. All right, are we done for this thing? The answer is yes. We've got our registration, but we have no way of logging out. We're logged in, we're registered, all that stuff is beautiful, but we have no way of logging out. Let's build in the login page or logout page. And actually, it's quite simple and dumb how it works. Like, when you see it, you're going to laugh, right? And I'm pointing this out to you because, again, I want you to picture in your mind, if we're doing C#, a class that does all this stuff. Call it whatever you like, an authentication adapter that we're made. I would call it in my authentication adapter class, right? And that does all these little methods that I don't have to recall over and over again. That only connects one time, right? With all those extra using statements and stuff. Because otherwise, we're going to have to do this. So I'm going to go back to this. You're going to see it, and you're going to be sick of this thing. But at least you've seen it a bunch of times now. Here's our logout. And we're going to do open with code. Now, there's no physical UI, right? But what we want to do, right, is we want to, on page load, when the page it loads up for the first time, we want to log out. So what I want to do is I want to store session info, right? And other stuff, right? Authentication methods. Put it down. In the authentication manager object. That's what I want to do, right? And I want to do that because I want to make sure that I store my session and log out. So my session, remember, whenever we talked about session already, right? Different storage. That's where our user information is being stored, in the session, right? Session storage. Okay. So if that's true, what I want to do is say something like this: authentication manager is equal again to the HTTP context, right? Uh-oh. Oh man, did I forget to put some using statements? I did. What are the required using statements? Required using statements, right? Required for identity and OWN security. God, what are they? Using Microsoft ASP.NET dot identity. Oops. I can't even remember them now as it is. Dot identity. Using Microsoft dot ASP.NET dot identity dot entity framework, right? And the last one is Microsoft, right? Dot OWN dot security. Those are the three. So 2 identity ones and 1 security one. All right, so once we have that, we have HTTP context that we want to kind of connect to, and it's the current context. We want to get a reference to this current context because we want to get the information from our session, right? So that's what this does. It says, hey, are we authenticated? Get that, put that inside something called the authentication manager. And then, of course, once we have reference to our context, perform sign up. How do you do that? Guys and girls, authentication manager dot sign out. That's it. I'm serious. That's why it's beautiful, right? Sign in, we pass in username and password, sign out, logs them out, right? And in here, we want to, of course, redirect the user to the default page. Now again, default page. Actually, you know what? Probably better to go back to the login page. Let them go to the default page on their own. So I'm going to do the response, redirect, and then we'll say SPX. Okay, so that's it. That's everything. So we got login, log out, and we got register. Okay. Before we stop and take another break, we need a connection. No connection, we can't do any of this stuff. Okay. Now, this is good practice for people who haven't been able to connect before to a local database, right? So it's an opportunity for you to see this again. Okay, first of all, right, let us update GitHub, Team Explorer. Hold on, I'm gonna go home. I'm gonna go to changes, right? I did my logout and register, right? So added logout and register logic, right? Because we don't know if it functions yet. Commit all, home, sync, and push. And now it's gonna go up on GitHub. So if I went too fast, you have it on GitHub, all right? And I'm gonna go build my solution, right? Build started. I'm gonna test what I got right now because it's important for me to test what I got. Okay, let's try it out. Let's run it. So I should be able to see my main page, and I should be able to go to login, and I should be able to go to register, and I should be able to log out. I can't do any of it yet, but I should be able to get there. For example, I should be able to do something like this. Register. Right? Be able to go there, right? For sure. And I should be able to log out, or should I? Should I be able to do this? Logout.aspx. Yeah. It checks to see if I'm logged out, if I'm logged in. If I'm logged in, it performs logout. If not, it does nothing. It just redirects me. Either way, it redirects me, right? The only time it performs a sign out is if I have a reference to my authentication manager, and the reference says that I'm logged in. It checks the session to see if I'm logged in. If I'm logged in, it logs me out. If I'm logged out, it redirects me. Either way, it redirects me. Okay, that works. That's good. Okay, next, the connection, and then we'll stop for a break. So I'm talked like crazy, right? All right, so remember we went back to SQL Server Object Explorer here, and I have a local DB, this MS SQL local DB, right? Now I've went ahead and created everything before, right? So remember that I have my COMP229. This is the connection, right? This is the actual database, right? I'm going to right-click here and go Properties. Okay, it's going to show my properties right here. Here's my connection string. That's what I need to connect to the database. Now I already have that connection, but it's for my Contoso database, right? My database for connection does not have to be the same. If I wanted to create another one, another database in here called COMP229 authentication, I could do that. Make a totally separate database for authentication purposes if I want, right? Or I could use the same one. And then it would create all the tables that are required automatically for me when I authenticate. Okay, let me show you how that's done, and then we'll stop. Okay, how do I do this? First of all, I need my web.config, right? So I'm going to go back, and I know I have my properties here and everything else. I'm going to hide this up a little bit, hide this one. Oops, I want to hide this one. I'm going to go back to my Solution Explorer, and I want my web config. Here's my web config file. Notice that I have a connection area here, right? Here's my connection strings. Here's what I want to do. I want you to copy this whole line, right? Here, everything, including the provider name, right? Copy. Now, this would be different if you were connecting to Azure. That would be this tutorial. And I wanted to kind of paste it up here. So now there's two connections with the same name. This would fail your build now, all right? You want to change the first one, the one that we use for authentication, to default. Has to be this. It's not an option. It's not an authentication connection. It's default connection. Next, this is identical. Look, right? In our case, because we're connecting to a local data source, right? On the same machine with the same authentication. Security is true and all that stuff. But again, if you were going up online, you'd have to put in your connection string from your SQL server online. So it would be something like my database.windows.net or whatever it would be. And then the username, you'd have a username and password. And you have to fill all that in, right? For now, though, this is all I need. I just need to change my default connection to say just default connection. Okay. Well, that's it. We've got our connection string, right? Now, again, if I wanted to make it a different kind of connection, right now we're connecting to the same database, right? Let's test this puppy and see if she works, right? So we'll run it. It's going to build. If it failed, it would fail right now, right? Right now, if I had a problem, it would fail, right? Okay, two things. I don't have my navbar. Navbar is what we're going to do after the break, right? I want to log in, and because I want to go to my students. So I click on students, it's going to take me here. I can't log in because I don't have a registration, right? So let's register for the first time. So I'm just going to type it in because we don't have a link. So I'm going to go register.aspx. Okay, let's check this out. Let's put a username in there. I'm going to put me, right? Notice I've done this before. And some kind of phone number. Sure, that's me. And how about how about some email, like tom@example.com. Gee, do you think I've done this before? Right? How about a password, right? Like, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then click register. If everything goes well, it's going to redirect me back to the main menu. Ta-da! We're good to go. Hey, what did this do? I'm going to save this for a second. What did this do? One, I can see the student list now, right? It's visible again to me. And I can click on add. Remember we did that redirect? Let's see if add student works now. Hey, it works. And cancel should take me back, right? So all that stuff is working. How about the delete, though? Whoa. I want to delete, like Tom, right? Can I delete? Can this button work now? It does. The functionality is all there. And all I've done is put it inside my stuff there. Now I want to log out. Let's type in log out. All right, so let's check this out. So logout.aspx. I log out. It takes me back to my login page, right? Cool. I want to go to my students and see if I can see it. Nah, it doesn't work. So we've done authentication from end to end now. We've been able to authenticate. We've been able to hide our student and all of our Contoso University files inside of a folder. We've been able to do that now up to this point. We've created a login page, a register page, and a logout page. And just to show you the database on the back end, right, what it's done is it's auto-magically created, right, our additional tables. So all the tables we had before were students, courses, departments, and enrollments, but not anymore. Now we have all these. And that was automatically created by Entity, the Entity framework and identity. So it created ASP.NET roles, claims, logins, users, and so on. These are all things that were automatically created. I did not create them. Make sense? And that's what you're going to have to do when you have authentication. Okay, again, you don't have to use the same database. I recommend it, though, for you. If you're using Azure, you can only have one database inside a database server, right? So it's okay to do this. It's not nice. It's ugly, right? In real life, we probably have a whole authentication database just on authentication. That's all it does to authenticate you. And another database just for data, right? We don't have the luxury here, so we're putting everything on one. Okay. Okay. So what's left? We have to fix our navigation. That's got a problem, right? Yes. No, I'll come back to you in a second. Go ahead. It's going to fail. Yeah. You're better off to use this stuff, right? You're better off. That's what I'm saying. I like your enthusiasm about creating your own framework, if you will. It's all done for you. Yes. Hold on. I'll go to you first. Yes. No, there's no models. This is, remember, it's the other way around. We don't create models locally in our, that's a good question though. In our classes inside here, there's no model, right? All we're doing is using a code first approach, right? To push create the framework we need to log in. That's all we do. We can't manage our users yet. If I wanted to manage our users, I can make a third connection. I would name it something else. An example would be user connection, right? And then when I create my connection, I'm going to create a new model, and that will be the user model context. And then I can have my user model. I can choose the data, the tables in the database, and I can manage my users that way. Another connection. Third, you can have as many connections in your web config as you want to the same database or other databases, right? That's how I would do it. Okay, good question though. Yeah. I'm sorry. What are you asking? Part 3 is the last day of your midterm. So that'll be on Friday of next week. Let's see how it goes. When we talk on the test, I'll decide. I'll see how your part 2 went. Huh? Next year. Can't be too far because it'll just mess you up at the end of the day. That's what it's going to do, because you'll see what happens to you. And it's good to know this stuff, because if I delay you, you won't have enough. If you haven't done this part for your test, and I ask you to do authentication, what are you going to do? That's why I'm getting you to do it before your test, right? As practice. Remember, your assignment is preparing you for the test, right? If you don't do that, you wait till to hand it in later, you're going to be bad on the test, right? So I like your thinking, but no, for now. Okay, let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll fix our navigation, because we have to do that. So navigation's all broken, right? And I want to make it so that there's a different navigation bar that comes up when we're logged in and when we're not logged in. So when we're logged in, it's going to show us some kind of login register, right? We're not logged in. When we're logged in, it's going to show us log out, right? Make sense? And we can hide. I'm going to hide the students and all that stuff unless we're logged in. So we won't see it unless we're logged. All we're going to see is log in and register. How do we do that? When we come back, we're going to get that done. And then we're going to fix up. We'll do the edit piece, because we didn't do that for last week. I want to do the authentication piece first, because that's the longest piece. And then we'll do the edit, because that's the last piece we haven't done for our CRUD. Right? We've done create, read, and delete. We haven't done edit yet. Okay? Let's take a short break.